Next, we'll make this more complex by adding a nested loop as well. So let's say we add another array for each of these elements. So when I'm on this record, I had another array I want to access, and for the second one as well. Let's make this subdata and just 1, 2, 3. Like this. So again, it would be good to set the variable first that we want to use. And let's do that through changing this variable name to subdata. We can remove this. We're not going to use this one right now anymore. We have subdata that's set to this dot subdata. We don't need the scope over there because we're not in a nested object, so I can remove those. So state self data dot variable row number dot subdata. That's our array. And just to make sure we are working with the right thing, I'm going to add a log to this. You'll also inspect script runner, of course, but this should be faster. And we'll see that we are logging the correct values. There's our value 1, 2, 3, and for the second one it's value 4, 5, 6. So now we'll have another for loop over here. Let's just change this one to a map array. Actually, I think what we should do is let's do a morph iterate array instead of this one. We'll need chain, and we'll need an ID for this one as well. So let's do SFM because we're inside the for loop in a morph iterate array. Of course, you can name these in any way you want to. Just stick to the best practices. So now what we can do is let's log it first to make sure that we can access the thing we want to access properly. I want to access each element inside this array. So I'll do variable dot record because that is our value over here. And we see we do have the correct values over there. What we can do now is we can access things from various scopes, of course. Let's change this log into an object. So let's log for loop row number and let's log morph iterate array row number. That's a bit long. Let's just do a for loop row number and morph iterate array row number. So we want to access a variable on the outside in the SF scope. So it's scopedVariable dot SF dot row number, and we have just variable dot row number because we're inside the right scope, and then we need to put our accessors in there, SFM over there and SFM over there. So we see the second one's undefined, and that's because morph iterate array needs row num. Then we see the correct values. So first, the for loop is row 0 for 3 elements inside on the inner loop, 0, 1, and 2, and then it's 1 for 0, 1, and 2. Those obviously being the row numbers. Let's see what happens when we replace this SFM over there with SF. Now you'll see that the first one still works properly, the second one does not. That's of course because when we're replacing this one, when the scope is SF, so the scope is SF, as soon as we hit this action over there, when we hit this action, variable at row num hasn't been set yet because it's only set as soon as we hit this inner action, not when we hit this outer action. It is good practice to use the outermost accessor for your access the outermost scope for your accessors, like we have over here. And that's because when we do it this way for SF, as soon as this action runs, we know we are in the scope of SF, which is the scope we set out there. So we know the scope is SF when we're there, and we know the variable exists, so I can access it. This means it only needs to be replaced once. If I do it this way, this accessor has to be replaced every time this action runs, instead of every time this action runs. So it's important to think about let's call it the outermost scope you can use for your accessors to make your script run more optimally.